am Lauren Egan, and I am an immigration attorney and the founder and CEO of Egan Immigration. Today, we're going to talk about SIJS, which is the Special Immigrant Juvenile Visa. I have a whole list of questions over here that you guys have asked me about SIJS, and I'm going to kind of go through them one by one. So the first one is, what is SIJS? So SIJS is for minor immigrant children, so under 21 immigrant children who are in the United States. And there are certain requirements that we have to hit, and that's what I'm going to go through now. So in order to be eligible, you have to be in the United States. You have to experience abuse, abandonment, or neglect by one or both of your parents. And that can break down into different arguments. So for abuse, for example, a lot of times we're looking at, physical abuse, maybe emotional abuse by one or both of your parents, verbal abuse, but sometimes it can be that you witness the abuse of somebody else. So maybe your dad abused your mom. That can be an argument for abuse for a SIJS case. Abandonment, that can be as simple as, dad abandoned the family and mom was a single mom. It could also be both parents left the kid in the home country while they went to the United States to find work. They left the kid with grandma and grandpa. The kid eventually went up to the United States, but he or she has not reunited with both parents. Maybe they reunited with one parent, but not the other. As long as there's some sort of separation, that can be considered abandonment. And then neglect, that's where I make the more creative arguments. So sometimes it's, in their home country, there wasn't enough money to put food on the table. So the kid didn't always have enough food to eat. That's not necessarily mom and dad's fault, but that can be neglect, not having enough food for your child, not having enough clothing for your child, all of those types of things. Other arguments that have worked well for me are if the parents could not protect their child from the gangs, and so they sent them to the United States where they would be safe from the gangs. Even though the parents are acting in the best interest of the child, they were unable to protect the child, so we can make arguments of neglect in that situation as well. Okay, so once we've established abuse, abandonment, or neglect, and that the child is in the United States, at that point we have to get what is called a predicate order from the family court where the child lives in the United States. So the different family courts have different age limits. There's some states that have up to 18 and some states that have up to 21. So it really depends on the state in which you live whether or not you're going to be eligible for SIJS. I always recommend that if you're close to 18 or close to 21, that you contact an attorney right away. And by close, I mean within a couple of years, because the predicate orders can take a couple of years to get. So I like to get started right away so that we don't have any issues with the age limit. So anyways, we're going to get this predicate order from the family court. A predicate order is the court essentially saying, we are giving custody to whoever is requesting it. It might be mom, it might be dad, it might be another family member, it might be a friend, it might be some other adult that's not related. Anyways, we're giving this custody, and we're basing it on the fact that the child has suffered abuse, abandonment, or neglect. So the family court judge is making those findings, and then we can use that in a petition for immigration. So then at that point, we're going to file the petition with immigration. As soon as we file the petition for SIJS with immigration, it goes into a waiting line. And the waiting line is not for the SIJS itself, but it's for permanent residence, because ultimately what we're trying to get with SIJS is permanent residence and then citizenship for the immigrant child. So we enter into this line. The SIJS itself takes about 1 to 2 years to process. Once it processes and gets approved, the immigrant child can get a work permit at that time, even if they're still in the line to get their permanent residence. So we'll get the work permit, which takes about 6 to 8 months. The case is still in the processing line. In a lot of cases, it's going to take about 4 to 5 years. It depends on the country in which you live, but El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, they are all in the same category, and those lines take about 5 years or so to process. However, if you have your work permit by then, you can keep renewing the work permit. Once the case gets up to its spot in line, we can file for the permanent residence. At that time, we will also request a travel permit and we will request a new work permit. Even if the other one is valid, we can request this new one under a different category that's a little bit more permanent. So we will do that. So then it goes into processing for permanent residence. That takes about 1 to 2 years as well. One really important thing to note is during this time, while all of these things are processing, the immigrant child, who might be an adult by now, if we filed everything before they turned 21, they might be, 25, 26 at this point, and it's still processing. They need to stay out of trouble. I don't want to see criminal history. I don't want to see arrests. I don't want to see any of that. We also cannot get married. That will essentially void out the petition. So you need to stay single legally and stay out of trouble because those things can really impact the case. Once the permanent resident case processes, it will hopefully get approved, and then at that time, the immigrant child is a permanent resident. 5 years later, they can request citizenship. If they're still under 18 5 years later, they have to wait until they turn 18. But assuming they're 18 by that time, they can request citizenship. And once they have citizenship, they're good to go. They can, at that point, petition for, if they now want to get married, they can petition for a spouse, they can petition for any children. They cannot ever petition for their parents, however. So one caveat with SIJS is that the immigrant child can never petition for their parents. And that is because immigration is trying to prevent fraud. They don't want parents to help their kids file SIJS petitions based on abuse, abandonment, or neglect, and then turn around and have their kids petition for them. So you cannot petition for your parents, but you could petition for a spouse or a child once you get your citizenship or even your permanent residence. All right, that is, okay, we want to talk about documents. That's one question that I get asked a lot. I haven't been looking at my list of questions, but I have a lot of them in my head, and I know that that is one of them. The good thing about SIJS is we don't need a whole lot of documentation. If we can get a birth certificate, wonderful, that's very helpful. We usually try and do that. And then immigration and usually the family court wants to see a declaration. So they want to know the child's story. They want to know what happened. What is the abuse, abandonment, or neglect based on? All of those things. And that's something your lawyer can help you do. In our firm, we help write the declarations. We talk to our clients, get the story, help write everything, and then make sure that everything is correct and true before we file it with the court. So you don't need to worry about having tons and tons of evidence or documentation. Immigration understands that in these situations, there's usually not a lot of evidence. It's very hard for children to get evidence of abuse, abandonment, or neglect. All right, let me make sure that we've hit every question here. The one last question that you guys had is, can my SIJS be revoked? SIJS can, and permanent residence can, for certain crimes, and the SIJS for getting married before the SIJS case is processed, and I believe before the permanent residence is approved. I'd have to double check on the permanent residence, but don't get married without, talking to your lawyer or me double checking, because I'm pretty sure it's up until permanent residence gets approved that your case can be nulled out if you get married. So you need to stay out of trouble, you need to stay single, but once you become a citizen, you're good to go. As long as your case was based on the truth and there was no fraud, even if you commit crimes, you cannot have your citizenship revoked at that point, which is wonderful. That's why I always want my clients to go all the way to citizenship, because you never know what could happen. Like, you could accidentally, commit a crime, and then it could be on your record and you could lose your permanent residence. But if you're a citizen, you are okay at that point. You're covered. So anyways, in summary, SIJS is for minor children under 21 who are in the United States who have been abused, abandoned, or neglected. If you think you fall into this category, or you think you know somebody that does, definitely give us a call. We offer free evaluations. The number is 202-709-6439. And hopefully I can help some more kids get their papers. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time. Adios.